Hey there, Sleepy Historian here. Tonight, you're no valiant knight, no pious monk, not even some dirt-poor peasant clinging to their miserable plot of land. You're what people deliberately ignore. The creeping shadow beneath church steps, the stench that makes noblemen crinkle their noses in disgust. You entered this world without a name worth recording, and you'll exit without a grave worth digging. This isn't some triumphant hero's journey. This is the story of someone who never stood a chance, whose disappearance won't leave a single ripple. Not in the town's memory, not in the priest's ledgers, not even, eventually, in your own fading consciousness. Before we begin, do me one small favor. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I'm endlessly fascinated by who's tuning in from across the globe. And if you'd like early access to more of these bleak historical tales, ad-free episode audio, or simply wish to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link below. But for now, settle back, get comfortable. Let's begin. You don't experience birth, you simply materialize. A screaming, unwelcome bundle of clammy flesh and wasted breath dumped into existence like awful sliding off a butcher's block. No celebrations mark your arrival, no midwife's proud cry, no soft blanket waiting to swaddle you in comfort. Your mother, if she even is your mother, lacks the energy to scream and long ago stopped flinching at pain. She might die tonight, or she might not. If she does, no one will fault her. If she lives, she'll rarely glance your way afterward. Ultimately, it changes nothing. No one anticipated your coming, and no one thanks divine providence for your survival. Your home, if we can generously call it that, is a ramshackle lean-to behind a pig pen on the fringes of a village that'll forget you existed within a year. The walls are a patchwork of wattle and mud. The roof leaks during rains and smokes with dust when dry. They wrap you in grain sacks that have been repurposed as rags and leave you near the fire, though not too close. Not for safety's sake, simply because the woman who birthed you lacks the strength to move and can't bear your shivering sounds. No one bestows a proper name upon you. Or if they do, it's never spoken often enough to stick. Maybe they call you boy, or hey you, or nothing at all. No one keeps track. The church might record your existence if someone bothers dragging you to the baptismal font, but it's equally likely no one will. You grow like a stubborn weed in a ditch, unnoticed, unwanted, yet inexplicably difficult to kill. Your earliest memories are fragmented sensations. A hand gripping your arm too tightly. A snarling dog guarding a bone you considered touching. The awful clamminess of wetting yourself at night, followed by the worst torment of lying in it till morning. Voices surround you, but none are directed at you, at least not kindly. You learn language not through being spoken to, but through being shouted at. Words come slowly. Move. Quiet. Thief. You grasp their meaning more from tone than grammar. Initially, you try crying. It seems your only innate skill. But tears don't bring milk. They bring slaps, or indifference, or being dumped outside when you're too loud. You learn silence faster than speech. Whimpering proves safer than wailing. Absolute quiet is safest of all. Your mother, if she survives, works too exhaustively to feed herself, let alone you. She scrubs laundry for women with fewer children and fuller pantries. She cleans perpetually dirty floors and fences goods that were never hers to begin with. You're not part of her plans. You're an inconvenience. Always hungry, yet stubbornly refusing to die conveniently. She leaves you with other women when possible, who pass you around like a chamber pot, holding you at arm's length, wrinkling noses, muttering about curses and bad omens. Sometimes you're left with the pigs. Not maliciously, just practically. The pigs are contained. You are not. If you wander off permanently, it spares someone grave-digging labor. Hunger gnaws constantly. Food comes in stolen handfuls, discarded crusts, forgotten scraps, whatever you can scavenge before being noticed. You learn to chew things before identifying them. You ingest spoiled meat once and spend 3 days violently ill. No one helps. No one asks. You recover somehow, or perhaps you simply stop vomiting. In your world, that counts as recovery. Other children exist, but they don't welcome you. They steal from you, mock you, strike you for being smaller or slower. You learn to observe them unseen. You discover that smiling invites suspicion, while trust is a currency you can't afford. Distance becomes your only possession. Clothes are whatever gets discarded. Your tunic might as well be a perforated sack. Your shoes, if you ever had any, disappear before the first frost. Your toes turn purple in the cold. Attempts to wrap them in cloth scraps only worsen the blisters. Complaining is pointless. Weakness only invites more suffering. One day, a man lifts you by the wrist, sniffs your head, frowns about devils, and dunks you in a trough to clean the rot off. The water's freezing. You scream. He laughs and walks away. You climb out alone. No one intervenes. The pigs watch you shiver, then lose interest. Death surrounds you so constantly that you can't recall your first encounter with it. Someone coughs endlessly. Someone goes still at night. Someone lies roadside for hours before anyone checks. You grow up with death like mold on cellar walls. Ever present, quiet, faintly sour. Your world is tiny. A few muddy streets, a sometimes dry stream. A chapel where you're only welcome if you're silent and invisible. You learn incense doesn't mask the knave's rot. You notice saints on walls offer judgment, not aid. A friar once gives you a lingering look that leaves a bruise on your soul. He says nothing, just watches too long before turning away. You try believing he was praying for you. The belief doesn't take. When it rains, you huddle under porches or squeeze below carts. Sometimes you wake soaked, sometimes bitten. You scratch until you bleed. The lice remain unfazed, your most loyal companions. Winter comes. You survive. Not through strength, you possess none. You persist through someone forgetting to evict you from the pig shed one night, where the straw was just dry enough to prevent freezing solid. That's all it takes. Not warmth, not love, just momentary forgetfulness and slightly dry straw. Come spring, you're still breathing. Barely. Thinner, filthier, hungrier. But you've endured. No congratulations come. No one marks the occasion. You don't even know what day it is. You just notice the snow's gone. Your toes remain attached, and your stomach still growls as always. For now, that suffices. Time passes. You're older now. Not grown, not wise, just big enough to no longer be mistaken for someone worth saving, yet small enough to still be overlooked when food disappears. You don't know your age. No one does. You measure time in winters survived and scabs turned to scars. You exist in perpetual limbo now, not living anywhere properly, just haunting spaces between proper existence. You lurk behind fences, beneath carts, under porch overhangs, hovering near others' warmth, but never invited to share it. Your beds change nightly, half-burned sheds, crumbling stables, anywhere with minimal shelter. You've become expert at recognizing straw mold patterns, distinguishing rat droppings from mouse droppings by scent alone, and interpreting approaching footsteps, whether they'll bring indifference, curses, or a sudden ankle grab dragging you back into the cold. What passes for your clothing has transformed from dull brown to the color of rotting vegetation. The tunic no longer covers your knees, the rough fabric chafing your chest raw when you move too quickly. You've tied rope around your waist to keep it semi-secured. Your feet stay perpetually bare. For so long you've stopped noticing new cuts until they weep pus. Some mornings you wake with numb toes, other times with chew marks, once from a rat, once from something unseen. Your kick didn't scare it off. The creature just paused, then resumed chewing more deliberately. That night, sleep never came. The lice have become constant tormentors. You scratch until bleeding, then scratch through the scabs. They've colonized behind your ears and at your skull's base. One futile attempt to crush them between stones failed. Your trembling hands kept missing. You gnaw fingernails to the quick, spitting flakes into dirt when there's nothing better to chew. Words come reluctantly. Language exists in your mind, half remembered from shouted orders and curses, but emerges slowly, malformed. Your voice cracks when forced. Some days pass without speaking at all. You begin forgetting how your thoughts sound. Silence feels safer, less likely to attract boots. The older boys have grown crueler, bigger, faster, meaner. They see you as pest, rival, waste of space. They gang up not for survival, but to reinforce your nothingness. One smashes your head against a wall until vomit comes. Another grinds your face into manure while the rest laugh. You've learned screaming makes them linger, so you don't scream. Adults show zero interest in your survival. You're blamed for missing food whether you took it or not. Chased from wells, doorways, even shadows someone claims to own. Once, a man accused you of cursing his wife's pregnancy by looking too long. He dragged you through mud until a priest intervened, not to help, but to mutter psalms and walk off. Outside bakeries, you study routines, the kneading rhythms, the baker's head tilt when measuring flour, how he throws scraps to dogs, but never you. Once you caught a gutter-adjacent crust, biting so fast you sliced your gum. Blood soaked the bread. You ate it anyway. No toys ever existed for you. You play with stones when too tired to walk. Name flies landing on your knees. Once you carried smooth green glass in your cheek for weeks like hard candy, removing it only to clean. It vanished one day, maybe swallowed. Sometimes you still feel abdominal tightness and wonder if it's still inside. Music reaches you once from a distant festival. Bells, lutes, a reedy voice singing of saints and seasons. Guards block beggars, but you lie beneath a wagon absorbing notes. You hum the melody for 3 days before it fades. Later attempts come out wrong, like someone else's memory. Another morning, you spot a traveler, a man with a heavy pack and worn boots radiating solitary acceptance. You follow at a distance. He eats something hard and dry, tossing rind into grass. You pounce once he's gone. It tastes of sweat, mold, and salt. Chewing anyway, it sits like a stone in your gut. You don't care. As twilight bruises the sky, the man veers toward a stream, settling under a tree. You don't approach, just find a roadside hollow to curl into, elbow as pillow, forearm as blanket. Damp grass, indifferent insects. The man ignores you completely. Your dreams fracture, broken bread, a woman's voice, thunder without rain. Dawn reveals the traveler gone. His boot prints vanish eastward. You don't follow. Walking back seems logical until you realize you're lost. Trees indistinguishable, sky unhelpful. Your stomach growls pointedly, but no pity exists here. You've wandered miles from a place that never claimed you, returning to nothing with nothing. No food, no friends, no name. Just the memory of a stranger who didn't drive you off. For now, that's enough. Begging becomes refined through grim observation. No one hands you instructions on starving with dignity, but you learn by watching survivors. The rules are unspoken but ironclad. Hands extended but not thrust forward. Head lowered but not cowering. Approach too eagerly and you're threatening. Too pitiful and you're diseased. Starve visibly but not grotesquely. Make them comfortable enough to part with scraps while preserving their illusion of generosity. The marketplace becomes your training ground. You linger beyond stalls, back pressed to posts, scanning for soft hands and full pouches. Target selection is everything. Women with plump cheeks and guilty eyes. Men who quote scripture too emphatically. Even then, coins come rarely. More often, nothing or blows. Most pretend you're invisible. The smells torture worse than hunger. Fresh bread, crusty, seeded, warm. Meat dripping fat onto coals with mocking hisses. Stews rich with onions and herbs beyond your naming. Even fishmongers' stalls taunt with salt and brine. You inhale like a beaten dog until dizziness comes. But other stenches exist too. Dung, animal and human. Sour milk, rotting meat, the eye-watering reek of tanneries. The alley where drunks sleep reeks of urine. Your own sweat has baked into your tunic like a second skin. Eventually you stop noticing, not because smells fade, but because you stop registering them. Timing is survival. Mornings when crowds are thickest and guards haven't yet eaten. Midday is worst. Sun turns cobbles to soup. Butchers swat flies with hands that'll swat you next. Evenings offer second chances. Sometimes stale bread gets discarded instead of sold. If quick and shameless, you might beat dogs to scraps. You lick grease from discarded parchment, drink from troughs and puddles, skimming surfaces before silt settles. Once you chew a cabbage leaf until your jaw aches, convincing your stomach it ate. Another time, swallowing a chicken bone whole brings a day of vomiting behind a coop. You become more careful, but only marginally. An apple seller near the fountain always kicks discards toward the same corner. You turn this into a game, arriving just after his sweep. Quickness earns a bruised apple. Hesitation means pigs dine instead. Once your eyes meet as you grab fruit, he looks through you like a puddle hoping to evaporate. You experiment with feigned blindness, stumbling near carts, hands groping air. People toss coins to avoid watching you search. One friar stops to pray over you, placing a hand on your head murmuring about healing. When he leaves, you peek to note where he drops his bread. No pride accompanies this deception. You stopped feeling pride long ago. Other beggars exist, veterans who've lasted longer, some elderly, some broken in ways you don't yet comprehend. They guard territories fiercely. A man with a twisted leg snarls at proximity. A toothless woman hisses if you sit on her steps. You learn boundaries. Whose corner is whose, which walls are safe, which earn kicks from sore-footed vendors. Sometimes guards don't need reasons. You're an eyesore to be driven off with sticks, fists, or boot soles. You don't run, running marks guilt. But you don't linger either. Quick exits into alleys, crowds, behind ox carts. You become smoke when necessary, filth the rest. Church steps are forbidden to your kind, reserved for respectable poor, like blind men with wooden bowls or widows with 5 starving children and obvious divine favor. One early attempt earned a coin from a fine-robed woman who snatched it back upon seeing your feet. Too slow to bite her, you never tried again. Feast days intensify the cruelty. Processions bring crowds, bells, perfumes, gold chalices, priests in embroidered robes speaking Latin like it sanctifies them. The square overflows with bodies, noise, food, pies wide as plates, wine smelling of boiled fruit, oozing cheeses, bread stacked high in baskets you'll never touch. The torment becomes unbearable. On one saint's day, someone you've never heard of and wouldn't care about if you had. You make yourself conspicuous near the fountain where processions pass. Hands higher, voice louder, endless pleases like incantations. You even add theatrical coughs. Starvation makes you bold. Surely someone will notice. Someone does. A guard. He watches with mild disgust, mouth twitching. Then, during a hymn as priests raise arms heavenward, he grabs your tunics back, hoisting you off the ground. Thrashing fails. He's strong. You're emaciated. 10 paces across the square, he shoves you headfirst into a pig trough filled with lukewarm slop and water so algae green it smells like summer decay. The crowd laughs. Not all, but enough. You scramble out soaked, stinking, humiliated. The priest's sermon continues uninterrupted. The guard wipes his hands, mutters about keeping peace. No one throws you anything that day. You don't cry publicly. You retreat to the tanner's alley, pressing your face into your arms until sunset. The pig stench clings for 3 days. No one comes close enough to care. But you've learned. Too loud, too needy, too visible. Next time, you'll make them feel holy for helping, not guilty for looking. That's the secret. They don't want to help you. They want to perform charity. And charity only flows when the giver gets to feel virtuous. You become a scholar of ecclesiastical rhythms, like a stray dog memorizing its master's habits. The tolling of bells, the swirling of incense, the congregation's synchronized kneeling and standing. You learn when to appear and when to vanish. Saints' days prove most profitable when people give not from desire but from perceived obligation. You stop expecting kindness and start relying on guilt. The church steps feel colder than they appear. Smooth stone worn down by generations of feet that never walked your wretched path. You crouch near the base, just below the pious sight lines, hands tucked under knees for warmth, chin buried in your collar. You only glance upward when hymns end and collective piety peaks. The trick is appearing small then, not expectant. They won't give if they sense anticipation. You prioritize saints' days not from devotion, but because the bread improves on holy occasions. Feast days bring sweeter wines, richer meats, loaves that haven't hardened. You'll never taste these luxuries, but their aromas taunt you as veiled women and shoed children carry baskets past. You perch there like a hunger-carved gargoyle, waiting, Some toss coins not to you, but near you, into grass, gutters, anywhere that lets them pretend this transaction is between them and God, with you as accidental intermediary. You know better than eye contact. They despise that. They donate for divine credit, not to acknowledge your humanity. A too steady gaze makes them withdraw offerings. Sometimes they spit. You study the more successful beggars, the scarred, the limbless, the gravel-voiced, mimicking their postures. One man recites prayers as parishioners exit. Something about lamb's blood and mercy for wretches. You don't recall the words, but absorb the cadence, inventing your own meaningless chant. The content doesn't matter, only that it sounds like suffering lightly sprinkled with scripture. Once, a friar pauses before you. Expecting dismissal, you're surprised when he rests a hand on your shoulder, smiling like he knows secrets you don't. He proclaims your hunger a divine test, your suffering spiritually meaningful, each stomach pang an opportunity for redemption. You nod, nodding is safe. You don't ask if he's ever experienced such holiness firsthand, if his belly's ever cramped empty enough to tremble. You let him finish, then watch him walk away humming. Another time, you attempt entering the vestibule just to escape cold. The air hangs thick with candle smoke and dust motes. You stand against a wall, breathing through your sleeve. A passing woman clutching rosary bead stares, then hurries off. Minutes later, two monks appear, one gripping your wrist, the other brandishing a broom. They don't beat you exactly, but encourage your departure the way boots encourage rats to vacate pantries. A week later, you try sitting closer after scrubbing your face with spit and sleeve, flattening hair with fingers, hiding your missing toenails. Perhaps looking more childlike than monstrous will soften them. A priest passes, dropping a single hard bean into your palm. You bite it anyway. The church calendar becomes your scripture. Not the feast names, but their patterns. Musical feast days loosen purse strings. Mourning days render you invisible. Lent brings sermons on sacrifice and empty hands. Advent speeches about charity yield barely sufficient alms. You don't want salvation, you want survival. You begin recognizing others like yourself. Rag-clad children, women with infants that might not be theirs, an old man circling while reciting St. Jude lines until paid to stop. No friendships form, no alliances. You exchange stories, sometimes lies, never names. Everyone knows the game. Each corner, gate, holy threshold only has room for one beggar. Too many clustered together ruins the effect. One boy your age smiles too much, missing two front teeth, wearing a belt made from broken rosary beads claiming it brings luck. You stopped believing in luck long ago. He shares a crust once. You reciprocate with stolen cheese. The next day he vanishes. You don't ask why. You simply move closer to his former spot. One pre-dawn, you claim the stone fountain corner near the church, practicing prayers, wetting hair to simulate grief slickness, pressing lips firm while widening eyes. The mass sounds louder today, some important visitor. The crowd's larger, better dressed. Emerging parishioners sing the final hymn with flushed cheeks. You edge forward, hand extended, beginning your chant. Then, impact. A sudden cold splash across your shoulders and back. Gasping, the stench hits, stale water, smoke, something foul. Turning, you see a monk holding an empty bucket. He shakes his head wordlessly and walks off. Some laugh. A woman murmurs prayers. No one helps. No one explains. You sit there dripping, not crying, just cold and still, beginning to mildew. The next churchgoers step around you. You've become part of the architecture again. A stain, a cautionary tale in piety. You leave only when fingers numb and teeth chatter uncontrollably. An alley less piss-scented than others becomes your refuge. You curl inward, remembering the friar's words about holy hunger, less suffering. You wonder if he still believes that now that you reek of his brother's charity. The church steps lose their appeal for a while. You learn to wait farther out, near the square's edge, where people feel pious enough to give but not pious enough to perform. The seasons turn. You feel it in your bones before seeing proof. The sky hangs heavier, as if the month's accumulated weight finally presses down. The air thickens, what in ways that itch before chilling. Your blanket, If it still qualifies, smells like soured bread. Within a week, mold blooms in the folds. Within 2, it squelches when moved. You keep it anyway. A wet blanket still beats none, and the stains hide your jutting bones. Your cough worsens, gaining a wet rattle. Not sharp, not painful, just constant, like a leaky roof you've abandoned fixing. Sometimes it convulses your entire chest, leaving gray-flecked phlegm in the dirt. You avoid examining it. Naming what grows inside you won't help. Spring means mud, nothing more. Flowers hold no beauty, greenery no promise. The same roads just suck louder underfoot. You slip more, losing precious scraps. Your rag-wrapped feet squelch, amplifying your stench. You stop attempting dryness. That luxury faded from memory long ago. Summer intensifies the torment. Flies return, thick, clumsy, crawling into your sleeping mouth, nesting in sores behind your ears. You swat until swatting feels pointless. They land on arms, cheeks, at corners. One morning, something wriggles in your boot. Removing it reveals 3 maggots embedded in your heel's flesh. You extract them with a wood splinter, telling no one. Who would care? But it's winter that truly kills. Always has. Always will. The older beggars call it the thinning season. People vanish without remark. A man you sat beside 3 nights running stops appearing. A woman who traded firewood for crusts is found stiff under a bench, lips split like dried bark. The elderly go first, then the sick, then the unlucky, then anyone who dozes too far from heat sources. You sleep in barns when sneaking in succeeds. Finding cracks in wooden walls, you squeeze through like smoke. Nesting in straw, curling into yourself like a rat. Face tucked under arm, knees to chest. It never feels warm, just less cold than outside. That's the metric now. Less cold, never warm. Warmth belongs to creatures someone claims. Even barns aren't safe. Someone always notices a farmer's son, a scullery maid, a drunk checking hay for dropped coins. They drag you out by ankle or ear, hurling names that cut deeper than kicks. Filthing, creeper, muckborn. You stop pleading. Last time you begged mercy, the man laughed and urinated on your blanket. You still sleep under it. That stench never left. Your teeth rot. One falls out chewing an already soft carrot. Another cracks in half during sleep grinding. The ache becomes constant, like your jawbones trying to escape your face. You tongue the holes, tasting iron. Chewing less, swallowing more. You dream of crisp white apples, waking with cheek blood from biting yourself in sleep. Your skin splits at knuckles, cracking like parched parchment when too dry. You wrap hands in cloth when possible, but it never lasts. Everything you own gets stolen, torn, or too soaked to keep. Elbows bleed, scalp flakes, wind bites raw any thin-skinned areas. One day, you realize you've lost the ability to shiver. It just stops. Testing with arm shakes confirms it. Your body no longer reacts. This frightens you more than expected. You start sleeping near others despite risks. Body heat helps, even when it reeks. You find a spot near a butcher's wall where 2 older boys stay. They're not much older, but enough that you stay silent during arguments. One coughs worse than you. The other scratches constantly, muttering about skin demons. They tolerate you between them, your head near their feet, knees drawn up. The stones beneath feel like ice. You try sleeping quickly before thoughts grow loud. Sometimes you hum softly, not the festival tune, just wordless noise. Last time someone heard humming, they hurled a bone at your face, accusing you of summoning spirits. One night, snow falls unexpectedly, heavy, wet, loud on rooftops. You press against the wall, blanket armored around your chest, shoulder wedged into the wooden frame. The coughing boy beside you curls tighter without speaking. His breathing sounds shallow. You consider asking if he's cold, but words stick. What's the point? Everyone's cold. Speaking it won't warm anyone. Dawn finds you stiff-shouldered and aching. Turning toward the coughing boy, you notice something wrong. A stillness you know too well. His eyes stay open, lips blue, nearest hand palm up on stone, snow-dusted. You stare a long time before nudging his boot with your toe. Nothing. Touching his arm reveals stiffness, not frozen solid, but close, cold like cellar-stored meat. The scratching boy glances over, grunts, rolls away. No one wakes the body. No one prays. No one marks the death. You sit beside him until snow begins covering his face. Eventually, you move to where his heat lingers faintly in stones. Pressing your back there, closing your eyes, you try not to think. You've survived another night. That's all anyone will ever say about you, if they say anything at all. You don't linger after the dead boy. Not because anyone tells you to leave. No one cares enough for that. But because the cold beside you sinks deeper once you know it belongs to someone no longer breathing. You walk away before sunrise, not toward anything in particular, just away from the wall, the body, the memory of that terrible stillness. For days you drift through frost-bitten fields and muddy roads, past villages indistinguishable from the last. Your cough persists, as does the throbbing in your ruined foot. But a thought begins forming, dull yet desperate, the way hunger sometimes masquerades as hope. You recall someone mentioning a monastery long ago, a place where brothers feed the poor and shelter the lost. You never believed it. But belief isn't required for trying. Your legs ache with that familiar hollow pain as you walk toward the rumored sanctuary, the road winding through hills and past crumbling mills, the kind of path people only take when seeking salvation or fleeing damnation. You hope you're doing the first, but suspect it's the second. The mud sucks at your makeshift shoes, nearly stealing one where the sole's mostly gone. For a moment, turning back seems sensible. Then you remember, there's nothing behind you anymore. The monastery appears at dusk, rising from frost-bleached farmland like a stone promise. The walls stand high, but not fortress high. A skeletal orchard clings to one side, and goats pace inside a low fence. Lamplight flickers in a window, warm orange against parchment-colored walls. Relief floods you before your body registers why. For a heartbeat, your legs forget their weight, your stomach its emptiness. You knock on the gate, soft at first, then louder. The sound echoes through the wood. Nothing happens. Then a shutter slides open, revealing a round, doughy face. A monk in gray robes, skin suspiciously clean, eyes looking at you like something stepped over. You launch into your plea before courage fails. You're not asking for handouts, just work, scrubbing floors, stacking firewood, digging latrines. You can sweep chapels, mend ropes, haul water. The words stumble, but the message is clear. You're useful, quiet, cheap. He doesn't interrupt, just watches until your voice falters. Then he says, "We already have boys." Not unkindly, not angrily, just stating inventory. Flour, cheese, orphans. No vacancies. You press gently, not begging, just persisting. You'll sleep in sheds, need no warmth, just dryness. You mention God surely wouldn't mind one more soul in a corner. He says nothing. The shutter closes. You wait 10 minutes, maybe 20, perched on a stone bench, listening to bells mark the hour, considering leaving. Then the gate creaks open just enough for the monk to emerge holding a wooden bowl containing 2 stale bread chunks and a cheese round so desiccated it clicks against the rim. He offers no words. You take it, not because it's enough, but because refusing might offend God or this gatekeeper of his. He nods as if to say there, obligation fulfilled, and turns to go. You ask once more, just one night, gone by morning, silent as a shadow. His back stiffens slightly. He doesn't look at you when answering. There are rules. We feed. We don't house. It breeds expectations. Attachment. You stare at the bread, contemplating attachment, wondering what kind of man fears bonds with someone like you. Before leaving, he offers one last thing. Not shelter, not work, but prayer. His hand rests on your filthy hair as he murmurs Latin. You don't understand the words, but recognize the cadence, like the friar in town long ago. You stand frozen, tired, cold beneath his touch. You feel nothing. He says, "Amen," removes his hand, steps inside. The gate creaks shut. The bolt slides home. The window's light vanishes. The wind picks up. You eat the bread slowly. The cheese requires sucking like a stone before teeth can manage it. You sit against the wall until your knees stiffen, then lie in the orchard fence's shadow, blanket pulled tight. You dream of goats circling endlessly and a monk pressing your head underwater, not in baptism, but silencing. Morning comes with 2 fresh flea bites and a stiff neck. You leave before the monks emerge for their holy strolls, polite enough to vanish before they're reminded of your existence. Your clothes smell worse after the night, whether from soil or the whimpering dog that slept 3 feet away. Scratching your legs, you feel movement beneath skin. You don't look. You already know. The road back to town holds no appeal now. The image of those clean, warm, guarded walls lingers like a splinter. How easily they could have saved you. How casually they didn't. You walk without purpose, just momentum, legs moving because stopping would mean surrender. Farmers ignore you. Cottage doors slam at your approach. Once you find a trampled turnip by the roadside and chew it raw, dirt and regret on your tongue. Days pass. Just when you wonder if the road leads anywhere but worse, you hear them. Voices, footsteps, the clatter of wheels, a donkey's complaint. A ragged procession of travelers heading south, clutching rosaries and relics, feet wrapped in rags and wool. Pilgrims. You spot them at a crossroads near a collapsed inn, their cart groaning under sacks, candles, and a wooden saint missing half his face. They speak softly, walk slower than most, pausing to pray at milestones, bowing at roadside shrines, thanking strangers for crusts even when sneered at. Scallop shells adorn their cloaks, some symbol of the road or salvation, you think. You follow at a distance for half a day before being noticed. A young woman with a crooked mouth catches your eye while dipping a rag in a stream. She doesn't smile, but doesn't shout either. Permission enough. You inch closer with each mile until trailing just behind the group, quiet as a shadow, cautious as a kicked fox. No invitations come, but no one drives you off either, more than you've had in months. You carry nothing but damp stench and desperation. Your blanket stays rolled under your arm, stiff with grime. A 2-day-old church step bread crust scrapes your gums when chewed. The others ask no questions, make no introductions. They simply allow your presence. At night they stop in fields or beside broken walls. Some sleep in tight huddles near fires. Others wrap themselves in silence against trees, lips moving soundlessly through prayers. You linger at the circle's edge, not too close, never too far. One woman offers a handful of beans without speaking. You nod, unsure whether to thank her or pretend the gift came from nowhere. On the 3rd night, someone sings, an old man with a forked beard, voice thin but steady. The melody hovers between hymn and lullaby. You know no words, but hum along eventually. Others join, some tuneless, some weeping. You let your voice rise just slightly, staying beneath notice. It almost feels like belonging. Next morning, no one looks at you. No one speaks to you, not even accidentally. You wonder if you imagine the singing. Maybe you were too loud. Maybe it never happened. You try helping where possible, gathering kindling, fetching water, shooing flies from the cart mule. Once you offer to carry a sack, onions or oats, you can't tell, but the bearded man snatches it back, muttering about curses. You pretend not to hear. A child, a girl no older than 6, walks beside you briefly, mimicking your steps in play. You smile. She smiles back. Then her mother yanks her away sharply, glaring at you like you've contaminated something sacred. The girl's face crumples in confusion. You don't walk beside anyone after that. By the 5th day, you've memorized their rhythms. The old woman's ankle pops, which boy stays closest to the bread cart, who spits when you pass versus who looks through you. They call you something behind your back. You hear it first as murmurs, then whispers, creeping curse. You've been named before, rat, leech, shadow thing, but this one's new. They think your hunger's contagious, your silence spreads like rot, your presence weakens their prayers. You say nothing. What is there to say? On the 7th night, you curl behind brush near the fire, close enough for warmth but excluded from the circle. You fall asleep to murmured prayers and dying embers. Dawn brings unnatural silence. The field lies empty, no fire, no footprints, just frost covering all traces. They left without you. No wake-up, no backward glance. You stand there long, breath fogging, hands stiff. You don't cry, Haven't in years, but something settles in your chest like a stone in a dry well. Not anger, not grief, just confirmation. Even among the righteous, you're forgettable. Eventually you walk, not to follow them, but because standing still feels like surrender. By midday your cough returns. By evening, frost creeps into your ruined shoes. You sleep in a fallen tree's hollow, clutching your blanket, stomach too empty to properly ache. Somewhere down the road, the pilgrims continue, lighter by one unwanted soul. You don't seek another group. The lessons learned too well. The road feels longer now, emptier somehow. Even crowded, you sleep less, eat less, think less. You move like a ghost between towns, head down, hands empty. Then one day, in a nameless village, someone sees you. It starts with a pear, half-rotten, soft to the touch, but real. You're sitting against a wall near the square, stomach twisting in that dull way it does when empty too long for proper complaints. The market's thinning, bakers packing up, butchers hiding cuts under brown cloth. You're not even begging today, just resting, watching better-fed lives walk by. She appears without ceremony, a woman in a faded green shawl, basket rattling with root vegetables. She crouches to your level, not all the way, just enough, unflinching at your stench or sores or blanket stains. Reaching into her basket, she extends the fruit. You hesitate. People don't give food like this, not directly, not intentionally. They toss scraps, drop coins while pretending it's for God. But this is different. Her hand stays outstretched until you take it. Here, she says. You look tired. Her voice is soft but plain, like someone who talks to animals expecting understanding. You nod, not agreement, just because you've forgotten other responses. The pear's juice runs down your fingers into knuckle cracks as you eat slowly. It tastes of rot and honey and something like forgiveness. You finish it despite aching teeth. She watches the entire time, then stands. I'm Alice, she says, adjusting her basket strap. You open your mouth, but no sound comes. You've forgotten your own name. She doesn't press, just gestures toward a lane between thatched roofs. Got a stable out back. Nothing clean, but it's dry. You can sleep there tonight if you like. You nod again, follow her past a shuttered bakery and angry hen coop. The stable smells of damp hay and old leather. No bed, just rags piled near a low beam, but warmer than ground and quieter than alleys. She doesn't linger, just warns against touching the mule and points to a broken pot for pissing. That night you sleep without kicks, rats, or shouts, curled around your blanket, pretending it's clean. When wind howls outside, you burrow deeper into straw, pretending you're somewhere far away. Not safe, exactly, but tolerated. That's enough. Morning brings a bowl of thick white gruel, dust and salt on your tongue, but eaten greedily. Alice watches, brow furrowed like she's solving a puzzle. Then, don't stay long. They'll notice. You nod. You're good at nodding by now. Easier than explaining a life too misshapen for words. You leave before noon. She doesn't say goodbye. You don't expect her to, but you carry her glance's warmth like a coal in your chest, repeating her name under your breath. Alice. Not for any reason, just because it's good to remember someone's name, even if it's not your own. The day dawns foggy, the kind of damp that seeps into bones. You wake in a ditch with your stiff ankle protesting every movement, like it's slowly fusing to your leg. Stretching brings no relief. Rolling your shoulders, you step onto the road cutting through the village square, stones slick with mist beneath your feet. Carts already rattle past, merchants calling cheerful greetings, voices of people whose stomachs haven't growled since sunrise. You don't see the cart until it's too late. A fast one drawn by two horses, piled high with flour sacks leaning precariously. The driver looks ahead, not down, or maybe he sees you and simply doesn't care. The wheel catches you mid-step. A crack echoes, sharp, deep, unmistakable, as the world tilts sideways. No scream comes, just all breath leaving at once, vision blurring with pain. You hit the ground hard, cheek pressed to cold stone, the stench of mud and horse sweat thick in your nose. Your ankle throbs once before going numb. Not the good kind of numbness, but the kind that whispers something vital has come undone. The cart doesn't stop. No shouts follow. Someone steps over you like you're spilled cargo. Another mutters about watching where you crawl. You lie there long moments, not crying, just gritting teeth through shallow breaths. Eventually, you drag yourself roadside using elbows and one good leg, moving like a half-crushed insect, deciding whether dying's worth the effort. That night you spend behind the butcher's stall, shivering and biting your sleeve whenever pain flares. Your ankle swells beneath rag wrappings, stretching the cloth drum tight with each pulse. You hope it's just broken. You know it probably isn't. You think of Alice briefly, wonder if she'd notice you missing, if she ever meant to offer more than one night. You wonder if her mule still chews hay in that stable, oblivious. Then you remember the pair, her smile, her voice's warmth, and the wheel. The world never lets you keep good things. It dangles them just long enough to bruise you when they're gone. Months pass. You survive. Somehow. The limp draws stairs now, not the kind that might bring help, but the other kind. The ones that start with glances and end in wide berths. You feel them before seeing them. Eyes lingering too long, faces tightening in quiet judgment. People cross streets preemptively. Mothers tuck children behind skirts. Men mutter prayers or stare through you like you're smoke from a midden heap. You try walking steady, but pain shoots up from your ankle with every step. It never healed right. Swelling gone, but the bone sits wrong beneath skin, like it shifted sideways and forgot to return. Some mornings you can't put weight on it at all. Others you force movement because staying still feels like surrender. You use a stick now, pilfered from a fence post, worn smooth by your grip. It helps little, but gives people something to look at besides your face. The wound festered for weeks. You picked it open to drain yellow pus, but it kept coming. Eventually it dried. Or maybe you just stopped noticing. You learned to sleep with legs straight, jaw clenched so tight it aches for days. Now the ankle's stiff most mornings, but at least bends. That's the only progress you get anymore. Your skin changes. Where it once just flaked, now it peels in angry patches. Dark blotches here, pale ones there, edged like burns. Your hands stay permanently raw. Your feet bleed if you walk too far. Hair thins at your crown. One attempt at washing in a rain barrel turns the water gray with filth. You don't try again. It didn't help. The cough returns fiercer, deeper, wetter. Sometimes it brings blood. Not much, just speckles and phlegm, but enough to scare people. Once you spit into a gutter, and a passing woman crosses herself 3 times before fleeing, skirts dragging mud. That's the pattern now. Hack into your sleeve, and they murmur about sin. Lean against a wall to rest, and someone tosses a stone near your feet. Not to hit, just to say move. You stop approaching churches, not from lost faith, though maybe that too, but because monks and priests no longer look at you like a soul worth saving. They used to see potential redemption. Now they see contamination. One friar lets you eat scraps behind the abbey wall, but only if you promise not to be seen. Another recites blessings in Latin when you pass, though the tone makes it sound more like warding than praying. Once you try entering a chapel at dusk, just to sit in back where candlelight doesn't reach. The priest blocks the aisle, robes clutched tight, not speaking, just staring until you turn around. You don't return. People don't say beggar anymore. They whisper other words. Unclean. Tainted. You hear cursed under breaths. You hear God's punishment just loud enough to carry. No one says sick. That would imply something treatable. They want distance. They want your story ending quietly elsewhere. Children look at you like they do roadkill. Not quite scared, not quite curious, just unsettled. One boy holds his nose, singing a rhyme about rotten rats. Another kicks your stick away while his father laughs. You wake one morning to find your blanket stolen again. The cold makes your joints seize so badly your spine hums when trying to stand. You spend that day hunched under an archway, watching people step around you like you're part of the pavement. No one meets your eyes. You try picturing Alice's face, but it blurs with memories of the cart, the wheel, your ankle's sickening crack. You stop trying. Flies follow you now, landing on your face and not fleeing until swatted hard. You start smelling yourself more clearly, sour and sharp, like wet straw and meat left sunbaking too long. Rubbing grass on your arms only worsens the rash. Your fingernails darken at edges. Teeth loosen. You pretend not to notice. Then one afternoon, as you sit beneath a boarded-up tavern's overhang, a boy passes with firewood bundled in his arms. He's young, not much younger than you were when this all began. He sees you, stops, tilts his head like you're some odd stain. You don't move, don't speak. He picks up a smooth stone, just heavy enough to matter, and throws it. Not hard enough to knock you over, but enough to sting. Enough to draw blood. You blink dazed, touching your temple, fingers come away red. The boy grins. "Leper," he says and walks on. You sit there long after, blood drying. The word echoing like a chant in a cathedral. No one checks if you're hurt. No one scolds the boy. You were there. Then the stone was. Then you were less than before. That night your hands shake under moonlight, wondering how long until someone decides you're more than sick, that you're dangerous, that your breath spreads plague, that your skin is a walking warning. The next morning, someone hurls a bucket of water at you from a window. You're not even near their door. You don't ask why. Rumors reach you in fragments, whispers between market stalls, drunken warnings from doorways. Town's cleaning house, they say, driving out filth, the sick, the sinful. You don't need details, you've seen the signs. Neatly stacked firewood near the square. Ropes tested for strength. Stocks scrubbed spotless like that makes them righteous. It's not just vagrants now. It's about purity, order, divine favor. Talk of witches, blight bringers, those who draw disease with breath. They don't say beggar outright, but they describe someone hollow-eyed and limping, who coughs blood into gutters and smells of rot. You might as well wear a wanted notice. You think you're 16 now. Those seasons blur and your bones feel decades older. You haven't seen your reflection in months, but know you no longer look like a boy. People act like poverty's contagious, like being near you might curse crops or soften children's bones. They look at you like they're waiting for frogs to leap from your mouth. You hear sin-stained and bowel-marked. One woman covers her baby's face as you pass, then throws salt over her shoulder. Another hurls dung at your back, calling it holy defense. You stop moving through towns by day, too dangerous now. You stick to alleys, edges, blind spots, and village rhythms. You watch for torches, pikes, priests with too much conviction in their eyes. You learn which bells signal prayer and which signal punishment, no longer trusting the difference. It's not just talk. You see it happen in one town. A toothless, half-blind man dragged from behind a tannery, accused of poisoning wells. They strip him, tie his hands, nail a sign to his chest before locking him in stocks. By morning he's dead. No one asks how, just toss sawdust on blood and resume onion trading. Another village has smoke hanging thick for 3 days. You don't go near, but hear enough. Someone claimed a girl was hexed by a hunchback. Someone else said the baker's miscarried wife saw a shadow pass her door. The fire started that night. You spend that night awake against a tree, eyes wide, teeth chattering despite sweat-soaked blankets. You start choosing sleeping places more carefully. No more town squares, no more doorways. Wilderness if possible, ditches behind stables, spaces under abandoned sheds. You cover yourself in leaves, mud, garbage, anything making you look less human, more like scenery. Your stomach cramps constantly now, too long between real meals. Roots dug from field edges aren't enough, but you swallow them anyway. You suck moisture from moss, chew leather scraps from cobblers' refuse piles. One attempt to steal a windowsill crust ends with shouts and a chase. You escape by sheer desperation, bad leg dragging, heart pounding loud enough to drown pursuit. You don't try again. Another day you see boys throwing stones at a man curled by a church wall, older than you, face swollen with infection, eyes half shut. He doesn't even raise arms to shield himself. You want to intervene, to shout, but don't. You just walk on, head down, breath tight. You've no room left for others' pain. Some nights you hear footsteps too close and stop breathing until they pass. Other nights the silence terrifies more, when even rats seem gone and all that's left is your ribs ticking, like rotten wood about to snap. You learn to press ears to ground before rising, to sniff for smoke, to gauge a place's mood by how doors slam. You see a gallows once, Newly built, rope thick and too clean. A scarecrow hangs as warning, sack overhead, arms dressed in rags too familiar in shape and stench. You don't go near. You know it was someone like you. Maybe someone you passed in night, forgot to nod at. You stop responding when spoken to, even kindly, especially kindly. You've learned kindness often sours, that soft voices one day become shouts the next, that bread-offering hands also point to stocks. You want nothing from anyone now, not even pity. One village posts a notice by the well. You can't read it, but a boy nearby recites it proudly, like a ballad. Cleanliness, virtue, removing unseen rot. He laughs at that part. You don't. You spend 3 nights in a half-collapsed grain shed, too ill to move. You vomit twice, both times dry. You think you sleep but aren't sure. You see things in peripheral vision. Faces, some known, some not. None speak. One just points. When you can stand again, you leave before bells ring. You walk hours directionless, stick dragging dirt, flinching at every movement. By evening your legs buckle. You collapse into a bridge's hollow beneath. Damp, stinking of fish rot and runoff, but hidden. No carts, no guards, no sermons. You stay 3 days. Don't eat, barely drink, sleep in fits, crawl only when wind shifts. You listen to sounds above, wheels on stone, hooves, voices rising and falling. None touch you, none see you. You vanish, not in death, but in a way that feels terribly close. The coughing starts, but not yours for once. You hear it first in the distance, ragged and high-pitched from someone moving quickly through the market 3 streets away. Then another closer, then someone retching in the alley behind the baker's shop. The whispers come next, slithering between market stalls like live things. A sickness is moving. Not some seasonal fever, not bad grain or spoiled meat. Something worse. Something that lingers in the very air, on skin, in the whites of eyes. You've been sick before, always sick in one way or another. Aches, sores, fevers, vomiting. None of it feels new. Rot has lived in your gums and phlegm in your throat for years. But this is different. Not because of the symptoms. Those are familiar. But because for the first time, it's not just happening to you. It's everywhere, all at once. And suddenly, no one is safe. The streets change faster than you'd think possible. People who used to stride confidently now cross themselves at every corner. Doors slam with new violence. Curtains stay drawn even at high noon. The church bell tolls too often and too long. You see carts moving through the square loaded not with goods, but with breathing blankets. Blankets that gradually stop breathing as days pass. You hear the word before you understand its full weight. Plague. The way people say it. Quiet, frantic, reverent. It might as well be another name for God. The kind that doesn't forgive. Lists appear on doors with names crossed out in red. Priests walk swinging incense burners like clubs to beat back the air. No one touches anyone. No one shares bread. No one gives alms, not even out of guilt. Towns shut their gates. Roads empty in ways you've never seen. Whole villages vanish within days. Houses abandoned, shutters torn loose, livestock wandering without masters. The silence becomes unbearable. Even the birds seem to have stopped calling. You walk into one town to find the market square littered with rotting food and overturned baskets. Not a single person in sight, just a dog chewing something you don't want to identify. You try to leave, but everywhere feels the same. Roads lead to doorways marked with warnings scratched into wood. Keep out. Plague here. Death inside. You consider making your own sign, pinning it to your tunic to save people the trouble of guessing. The cruelest irony? You don't smell any worse than usual. And now that's a problem. Before, your stench kept people away. Now it invites scrutiny. Everyone's terrified of the sick, and you've never looked like anything else. You try avoiding towns altogether, but hunger eventually wins. When it does, you face the same reactions. Backs turned, stones thrown, threats hissed from behind doors that won't open. Once you approach a field where a farmer tosses scraps to his pigs, you don't even speak, just look. He picks up a hoe and tells you he'll break both your legs if you don't leave. You don't doubt him. You leave. You grow weaker, not from plague, at least not yet, but because there's nothing left to scavenge. No one leaves scraps out anymore. The dogs eat better than you do. One night you chew bark until your jaw aches, then swallow it. You regret it immediately. One morning you wake in a burned-out cottage's hollow to find your hands shaking too badly to hold your stick. Your breath comes in shallow gasps. You crawl to a puddle and lap at it like a dying animal. You vomit most of it back up. Your stomach has forgotten how to keep anything down. The fever comes that night, sharp and sudden. Your whole body burns beneath the skin. You sweat so much your blanket turns slick. You try crawling into open air, but pass out midway. You dream of your mother, or the idea of one. Just a shadow leaning over you, then absence. When you wake, the sky hangs gray and your limbs feel weighted. You can't tell if it's dawn or dusk. You manage to stand, but your knees buckle almost immediately. You crawl to the road and slump beside it, hoping someone will pass. Not necessarily to help, just to acknowledge you're still there. A kind word would be miracle enough. Even a kick would prove you haven't completely vanished yet. Eventually a cart comes. You hear the wheels creak before you see it. Two men walk beside it, faces wrapped in cloth. One carries a hook, the other a ledger. They speak quietly to each other, pausing now and then to nudge bundles with the hook. You realize what's in the cart as it nears. Bodies, not wrapped properly, not cared for, just limbs tangled together like kindling. Some are already stiff, some aren't. You try to move, but your arms won't lift you. You try to speak, but what comes out isn't a voice anymore, just a rasp. The man with the hook looks at you, tilts his head, prods your side with the handle. You flinch, barely, but enough to make him pause. Still breathing, he mutters, but not like it's good news. The other shrugs. Won't be for long. They lift you anyway, one at your shoulders, the other at your legs. You don't fight. You barely register being moved. You're too cold, too tired. You don't even scream when they drop you onto the others. The weight of them crushes you. Heads loll at wrong angles. Hair mats with sweat and worse. One cold hand rests across your chest, not as cold as you'd expect. The cart lurches forward. You lie there, not dead, not alive in any way that matters, just present, waiting. You wonder if this is it, if you'll be tossed into a pit before your heart stops, if anyone will notice if you start moving again, if you even can. You consider calling out, just once, just to be sure. But you don't, because part of you knows the truth. If you weren't dead when they found you, you will be soon enough. You don't know how long you lie in the cart. Hours maybe. Days. The stench grows thick enough to coat your tongue. The bodies shift around you with each jolt of the wheels. You stop trying to move. There's no point. Your limbs feel packed with wet sand. Heavy, slow. Your head swims whenever you try to lift it. At some point your fever returns. Or maybe it never left. You sweat, then shiver, then sweat again. You drift in and out of something that isn't quite sleep. When you wake, it's to unfamiliar voices, low, bored men talking like they've done this 1,000 times. One complains about the weight. Another says, leave the one still breathing. No room. A third chuckles and says, half the time you can't even tell. You feel the hook prod your ribs, testing. You flinch, just barely. Someone notices, but the cart's already half empty and the pit's waiting. You're not worth sorting. The tilt comes sudden and hard. The cart tips. Your body slides with the rest. Limbs tangling, shoulders scraping wood, skulls knocking against skulls. The trench's edge looms, then disappears as you tumble in. You land in silence. Not the kind that follows death, the kind that makes room for it. Dirt hits you almost immediately, one shovelful, then another. Not heavy at first, just the soft patter of earth collecting in the small of your back. You try to cry out. You do, but your throat's too dry and your lungs barely move. The sound comes out as a cough, a twitch, nothing loud enough to notice. More dirt follows. One load lands across your hip, another across your face. You try lifting your arm and can't. You try to roll, but the weight's already there, small at first, then growing, pressing, settling in all the wrong places. Your mouth fills with soil. You try to spit, but your lips are too cracked, your tongue too slow. You breathe through your nose until that closes too. The pressure builds. Your chest rises once, struggles, Rises again, slower this time. You remember, vaguely, a time someone tucked you into a blanket. You remember the weight, the warmth. This feels nothing like that. This is final. This is forgetting. You think of your mother, or the idea of one. A shape that might have held you once, or didn't. A shadow that left you behind. You wonder what she'd say if she saw you now. Probably nothing. You think of Alice, the woman who gave you the pear. Her eyes were kind. You think she meant the smile, the offer. You hope she's still alive. You hope she never sees a cart like this. You try to take another breath. The dirt's too heavy now. Your body twitches once, twice, then stills. The shovels keep going. The trench fills, and no one ever knew your name.